Hey there, this is the week one video. The first week after the death of the parent, or in my case, the death of my father in the same year as the death of my mother. So we are left with their house. The first things you're gonna be doing that week, besides for being shocked and mourning, is, according to my notes that my wife lovingly took, so we know what we're doing, who are you notifying? You're going to be reaching out to friends, family, neighbors, letting them know. We ended up just gathering at my parents' house and kind of just walking around in shock. And I feel like, that's the first time you're going to take something like, oh, this is you're just kind of collecting some things at this point, memorabilia, things that you're taking back to your house in this, again, kind of a state of shock. Like, all that stuff could have sat there. We didn't need to take home whatever, the tea kettle or whatever we felt like we needed to do at that time. But, you're not really thinking straight. Because my mother had died a year ago, we had already gone through this pretty recently, and we're like, well, we need to reach out to the funeral home. When we had selected the funeral home at my mother's passing a year ago, we had talked to the neighbors, and they had said, oh, this is who people use around here. And, it's not like hiring a contractor to do your roof. There's probably a couple in your town. They're probably going to do the job correctly. Just ask around. And we selected one that was closer to my parents' house, which was pretty convenient, that you can get in the car and just drive over there. And, you're not driving a half hour. We were 5 minutes away. They are going to contact Social Security and stop the Social Security payments if your parents were of that age. So there's one thing you don't have to take care of. My parents were both Catholic, so we're having a Catholic mass funeral. The funeral parlor reaches out to the church, alerts them. The funeral parlor also contacts the medical examiner's office, and with your permission, takes possession of the deceased, brings them out of the morgue, basically, and puts it into their private facility. So once that was handled, then it's like, oh boy, we look at a calendar of what my father had going on. It's like he's got multiple medical appointments. We go out to the mailbox. There's a ton of mail. There's a bunch of bills, and there is just a ton of scam mail. There's a ton of charities that just looking for donations. We realized that when my mother passed away, like the amount of, there was easily $40 to $60 a week going out of that house, just writing checks to charities that God knows, like, I don't want to assume anything, but a lot of that's probably not going to help anybody besides for paying for administrative costs. So we're also on a very limited budget as the Social Security has stopped, and that's how they are paying a lot of their bills. So first thing was to do was to just like stop paying some of these people. Then we also had to call up, there's my father, dentist appointment, foot doctor appointment, reaching out to other family members. And excuse me as I flip through these notes, because as I'm making this week one video, it is 8 weeks later. There's a dermatology appointment. Okay, then we have to actually talk to the bank. Be like, all right, this is what's going on, try to get somewhere with them. And I can tell you 8 weeks later, you're still going to be talking to the bank. Like, none of this is going to be solved simply or easily. It's incredibly complicated in this day and age. Even with all the electronic and communication and technology we have, sometimes I feel like it's really simpler just to like drive down to the bank and talk to somebody rather than try to be on hold with a call center or go back and forth with emailing. So my father was also the executor of his cousin's estate. We had to contact them and say, hey, my father has passed away, he's no longer the executor of the estate. They, of course, need death certificates. Death certificates will be taken care of by the funeral parlor. It's probably going to take a week plus for them to get those physical copies to you. So as that's going on, you're setting up the funeral dates, burial dates, you're picking out, in our case, for the Catholic Mass, what hymns, who's going to speak. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what's happening that first week. You know, you're scrambling, trying to get somewhere, and you're probably not getting anywhere. I know I didn't. I thought I was knocking some of this stuff out of the park on week 1, and here I am, week 8, still calling these people. So keep notes. Like I said, my wife, smart woman, wrote this down in a notebook so that we can look back and figure out what's going on. As time continues to move on, you know, I've stopped writing in this, and I'm like, I really should have just kept keeping the notes. It's a big help. So that was pretty much what we had going on that first week. Some of my other notes, oh yeah, so no one's at the house now. So we went out and got some light timers, you know, just plug in light timers, little dial, cheap thing at Walmart. It's a couple bucks for one of them. The lights come on at night, lets people think, you know, the house just isn't dark. Popped into my mind too was just getting an alarm system. We use Simply Safe. I have no affiliation or kickback money from those people. I use it at my house. It was just easy enough. I think there's a bunch of other options out there for under a couple $100. We were able to plug all these things in and have an alarm monitoring system watching the house. One thing I would say, I purchased all those because we purchased them for this house. Why wouldn't I purchase them over there? Well, now there's options to rent. I probably should have rented those items, given that they're only going to be there for 3 or 4 months. So it actually would have been cheaper to rent those if you're planning to sell the property as we are. Yep, some of the other things that pop into my mind, week 1, oh my God, there's bills, there's a car payment. You have to keep up with that. We're reaching out to attorneys. My parents had everything in a trust, luckily, so we're going to be avoiding a lot of probate. Maintaining the property, you got to keep it looking like someone's living there. You don't want the place to start falling apart. And yeah, it's just a sad first week. It's shocking. You know, you're going back to work. People might be a little bit awkward around you. They don't know what to say. But we'll get into week 2 in the next video. Kind of get our feet on the ground, start running, and digging into what has to happen. So week 1, it's a little bit of a shock. Week 2, we'll get a little bit more into the meat and potatoes of what needs to be happening. See you soon.